You're listening to the Telltale channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com. So the first article I wanted to take a look at is by the friendly atheist Hemant Mehta. The name of the article is "Judge, Christian Dad Who Says God Wants Gays Executed Can't Brainwash His Kids." This is fairly groundbreaking, so let's give this article a read and see what it says. Should parents be allowed to instill their religious values in their kids? I would think most of us would say yes. What about religious values that we would rightly call hate speech? What if the religion teaches that gay people deserve to be murdered? That was the issue at the center of a now-resolved custody battle in British Columbia. The unnamed father, who goes by the initials JKH in court documents, was radicalized in 2015 after watching YouTube videos from independent fundamentalist Baptist preachers Steven Anderson and Roger Jimenez. Okay, of course. Of course this is about the NIFB. They aren't IFB. They aren't independent fundamentalist Baptist preachers. They're NIFB now. Steven Anderson and Roger Jimenez. I really need to cover them deeper on my main channel at some point because I haven't covered them in a while. Anderson, of course, has a long history of saying things like, if you executed the homos like God recommends, you wouldn't have all this AIDS running rampant. He has also said the U.S. government should execute homosexuals by way of a firing squad because that's what the Bible commands. The Bible commands firing squad? Did they have guns back then? His statements have gotten him banned from 34 countries and counting. Jimenez is no different. After nearly 50 people died in the Pulse nightclub massacre, he said to his congregation that the real tragedy was that more of them didn't die. Yeah, this guy is really fucking horrific. Goodbye monetization. I feel like this is an important enough subject to just say what needs to be said, though. So back to JKH. He's watching these videos beginning in 2015. He buys into their hate speech. It's not just the anti-gay stuff either. He's saying those IFB preachers are also anti-women. It's not IFB. IFB's bad enough. This is NIFB, New Independent Fundamentalist Baptists. This is a more extreme branch off of IFB. This group is very malicious and ugly and out for blood. It is a death cult. I do not say that lightly. It is one of the most extreme groups I have ever covered. I'll just leave it at that. It's one of the most extreme groups. I'll stick with that because I've covered some pretty extreme ones. Anyway, continuing on with what this says. Those NIFB preachers are also anti-women. They practice a form of complementarianism that leaves little room for women to have their own careers or much of a life outside the home. A wife's job is to obey her husband, end of story. JKH says that even if his religious views seem extreme, he doesn't personally promote violence. Anderson and Jimenez would say the same thing. They want the government to execute gay people, but they insist they would never personally pull the trigger. I think that they'd say that they would personally pull the trigger as long as they were within the legal bounds. I think that they're trying to stay within legal bounds if at all possible, but say the most horrific shit they can in the meantime. Tommy McMurtry said this. If you guys watch Mr. Atheist, you'll probably know these people, these names. Steven Anderson, Tommy McMurtry, Roger Jimenez, and others. You'll know these names. Tommy McMurtry famously said that gay people belong 6 feet under. He wants to put them where they belong. That kind of thing. That's the kind of rhetoric that you're dealing with. They barely border on the edges of legal speech. I don't know what the bounds are for free speech exactly or how it relates to this, but they operate right on the fringes of it, right on the edges of it. But I got to thinking to myself, like, law isn't the thing that determines morality. The two things are completely unconnected from each other, morality and law. I mean, law tries to follow morality if possible, but it doesn't. So my question to myself is, I know that right now, ostensibly, they're operating within the bounds of free speech. Morally speaking, is it right for them to talk about killing gay people or want to express an interest in killing gay people? And the answer is no, I don't think so. Now, it doesn't mean I think they should be jailed for it, but it does mean that I'm willing to take their platform away. A while back, Teal Swan was holding an event, And I had the opportunity to deplatform her if I chose to. It was presented to me like, do you want to take part in this? Do you want to try to take her down? And I thought about it, and I decided, yes, I do want to see Teal Swan taken down. Just her rhetoric is harmful. Her beliefs are harmful. She's toxic. She's a cult leader. I don't want her to have this leadership position. But I decided not to deplatform her because she isn't actually actively talking about committing violent acts. There is a line for me, a moral line, and it's a difficult line to find sometimes, but pretty much for me, the line is, are they actively talking about and promoting violence against a group of people? Teal Swan was not, at least at the time. The NIFB is, and has been, and will continue more than likely. So I have no moral qualms with deplatforming the NIFB. But I take deplatforming very seriously, and I don't just do that for anybody. Anyway, the point here is this group is very extreme, and I am willing to work against this group to the best of my ability. Anyway, let's continue reading here. In 2018, JKH and his wife AJH, a fellow Christian, decided to get separated in large part because of their religious differences. That's surprising. I think the NIFB takes divorce very, very seriously. She didn't buy into the hate speech. Okay, that's a plus. That left the question of how they would handle the religious decision-making when it comes to their 3 kids, ages 5, 4, and 2. That's rough. I could be wrong. I believe the NIFB is also part of the Quiverful movement, which basically, it's the same thing that the Duggars are part of. You guys know the Duggars, 18 Kids and Counting, that TV show. It's basically this religious movement where you're not supposed to ever use birth control. You just have kid after kid after kid, and not good. So I'm honestly surprised that they stopped at just 3 kids. Maybe they hadn't been married long enough for more than that. They could have been married for a solid 5 to 6 years if they did things just right. They could have been married for 5 to 6 years with 3 kids. AJH told the court she did not want JKH to have any say in their religion because she didn't want his hateful views influencing their children. That left the issue to the courts. Yesterday, Chilliwack Provincial Court Judge Kristen Mundstock, wow, what a name, Kristen Mundstock, handed down her decision. The mother would get to make all religious decisions for the kids, not out of religious discrimination against the father, but because the kids would become social outcasts if they adopted his views. And it's her job, according to Canadian law, to make these kinds of decisions solely in the best interest of the children. That's extremely fascinating. I don't know that I agree with her reasoning on that, but I don't know. What a complicated situation. Here's a quote. The father's religious views are antisocial and will cause the children to be unable to get along with a large number of people. The children will find themselves in the same position socially as the father. The father was very clear in his testimony that his religious beliefs cause him to be unable to get along with a lot of people. For these reasons, I find it would not be in the best interest of the children for the father to make decisions respecting their religious and spiritual upbringing. She added that JKH would not get alone time with the kids either, because he basically said if the kids were with him, he would preach his Christian hate to them, no matter what the court said. Instead, he'll get 2 hours a week with them in a neutral location with the mother also present. That makes sense. This bit about not allowing him to be alone with them because he has expressed that he's going to violate court orders. If the other person expresses, I'm going to violate court orders, I see no issue with them limiting it to unsupervised visitation. Let's continue reading here. All of this is the best possible outcome for the kids. They don't deserve to have their lives destroyed just because a Christian extremist wants to indoctrinate them to hate certain groups of people. It's not the responsibility of any court to get in the way of anyone practicing their religion. And that's not happening here, since the father will get to spend as much time as he wants inside his Christian cult. But his kids aren't old enough to make that decision for themselves. They shouldn't be affected by his irresponsible and dangerous beliefs. Wow, man, this is complicated. This is really fucking complicated. I agree with the decision, but not the reasoning behind it. The reason the judge chose to not send the kids to the father and let him brainwash them is because she didn't want them to be social outcasts. Oh, that's rough. I don't think that should have any bearing on the decision, the social outcast thing. God, what a tough situation. All things considered, I'm glad things played out the way they did, but I just wish that there were better reasons for it. I spent the day thinking about this. In retrospect, I've decided I strongly disagree with the judge's decision. This is absolutely, without a doubt, a death cult, and it's a violent and hateful one at that. But the social outcast thing is an unacceptable reason for barring him from teaching something to his kids. That reason could be used to prevent anybody from seeing their kids. What about an atheist parent? Teaching the kids about your lack of beliefs could be a reason to prevent the parent from seeing the kids. I agree that the parent has extremely dangerous and harmful beliefs. He's a member of a death cult. But we need to define why those beliefs are dangerous and harmful, where others are not. The fear of the kids becoming social outcasts isn't good enough for me.